Welcome back to another episode of the Vet Worthwhile podcast. I am James Yost, partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Travis York, owner of 3-1 Advisors. Travis, how are you?
I'm doing great today, James. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. All right, we are back with another episode of the Vet Worthwhile podcast by Signature FD. My name is James Yost, hosted as always by my good friend and partner, Travis York.
Good afternoon, James. How's it going?
It's going great. Beautiful day. Starting to get a little bit chilly outside. So, Travis, what are we getting into today? What are we talking about? Who are we talking to?
Well, before we dive into what we're talking to, I'm excited. We're going to have Robin Brogdon, who is with BluePrints Veterinary Marketing, here with us today. Robin, we're excited to have you on the show.
Likewise, excited to be able to talk to you about ESOP.
Wow, just jumping right ahead. Well, maybe before we jump into where we're going, you gave away my big surprise. I'd love to just start by sharing a little bit about your background, your story, and since you gave away the big secret, you own a marketing firm. I think obviously want to share your background, but why would we have a marketing person on to talk about an ESOP? That's going to be the best question that we address today. But I'd love to just start, Robin. Can you share for our listeners a little bit about your journey and where all you've been involved in veterinary medicine?
You bet. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to talk with you and James, Travis. I think this is such an important topic, and veterinary medicine for me was a second career. I landed in it by accident. I spent the first 20 years of my career in sports marketing. Growing up, we were all athletes and, we all played a lot of different sports, and it was a very natural path for me to take. I went to University of Michigan, go Blue, and worked for the athletic department at the time in graduate school. My whole family kind of tracked that path. But my husband and I adopted our first dog together a year after we were married. And sadly, he was he was a mutt. We think he was probably golden retriever, black lab mix. And our family veterinarian diagnosed him with lymphoma. And she referred us to a veterinary oncologist, which 20 some years ago, I said, "Oh, what?" Mind you, I'm the daughter of a human specialist and consider myself a pretty educated pet owner, having chosen to only have 4-leggeds for children. And I had no idea that specialists existed, but I took our veterinarian's guidance and went over and had a consultation with the veterinary oncologist, and we started treatment for his lymphoma. And sadly, he was one of those statistics that 5 weeks later, we lost him, which is not typical for lymphoma caught in an early stage like he was. But during the course of his treatment, I got to know the oncologist, and I got to know a lot about specialty medicine and all the different specialties that were available to care for our pets. And 5 days after my dog died, this oncologist hired me to run her business. And she was already, she was an early specialist, but she already was running 2 clinics, one in Los Angeles County and one in Orange County, where I live here in Southern California. And she grew so quickly over the few years she had been in business. She had never really created her business. She simply carried a bucket of chemo around from location to location, treating patients. So when I came in, she was still a sole proprietorship. She had not incorporated. She had never reconciled a bank account. There were no employee files. Came to find out there was no actual business license. There was a premises permit. She didn't know what she didn't know. And so I had my work cut out for me. But what I learned during that time frame was these are incredibly good-hearted people who have amazing clinical skills and compassion and teams that are just incredibly dedicated to the care and well-being of our animal companions, yet they really had little to no business skills. And so because I came through the business arena and had worked in marketing and business administration and operations, mostly in the sports arena, but I had also worked in personnel prior to, joining the animal health profession. I really had great confidence that I could do a lot for her practice. And so fortunately, a couple years in, we had moved her into some newer facilities. We had built a big new specialty center in Los Angeles, of which she became a tenant. and really helped guide all of the practices, particularly within the specialty center in Los Angeles, to build a brand, not just a practice, and try and build some legacy and try and build some roots and teach them how to create truly collaborative relationships with primary care veterinarians in the area and not just expect referrals because they had additional letters after their name in the form of board certification. So,
one second, Robin, you kind of brought something there, and I hate to kind of jump ahead to where we are, but what you said kind of resonated with me, right? When you gave away our big secret that we're going to talk about ESOPs today. And then you talk about way back when you first started working in the profession, creating vested teams and legacy and kind of all of the pieces that I think, from some of what you've done recently in the ESOP world, there may be just a great tie there for you to kind of tie together how it started and where you are today, and why when James and I said, hey, you want to talk about ESOPs, it resonated with you.
You bet. So, I always say, Blueprints is what most people would refer to as a traditional ad agency, the Madison Avenue kind in a veterinary scale. And we like to joke, we're a little bit like Mad Men without the alcohol, at least until 5:00. And so what I mean by a traditional agency is we really work with our clients to develop a brand and some differentiation and really identify a place in the market that they can own so that both primary care veterinarians and pet owners really understand who they are, what differentiates them, what they can expect when they have some sort of interaction with them. And it's not just about producing tools like websites or search engine optimization or brochures. I mean, you've got to kind of start at the beginning. And so with our clients, what we really try and do first, and those clients that choose to work with us really understand that it's not about the brochure and the website. It's about who they are and how they can effectively communicate that to all of their audiences. And in our case, working with a lot of specialty and referral practices, they have 3 audiences. The most important audience by far is the team. And we know in today's difficult recruitment environment, that really matters. That people that work in the profession need to understand why they should even consider working for a practice. So who are they and what can they expect as an employee? 2, they've of course got the pet owner client. And 3, they've got the primary care veterinarian that may be referring a patient to them. So in our mind, who the practice is and how they operate and what their culture is all about really lends itself to thinking about what the legacy of that business might be, how they want to attract employees, how they want to build their practice and their culture, and how ultimately they might want to exit. And with the proliferation of consolidation over the last decade in particular, and so many specialty and emergency practices, it's estimated roughly 75% of them are now corporate owned. What we have seen happen with one of our really marquee clients by going the ESOP route has really created what we believe to be a unique opportunity that we were happy to talk to you about because we think it can be an alternative to the exiting options that are out there.
Yeah, there's so much there that is fantastic, Robin. And God, I wish we had more time to dive into all the various topics that we've already touched a little bit on.
I know.
And I know we're our topic is ESOPs, and love everything you have to say about going deep with your clients to figure out like what the true identity is of that, what they want the practice to be, the identity of the practice owner and their brand and how they tie all that in. And so from
James, if I could interrupt you really quickly, just to point out that, veterinarians not necessarily being strong business people, they're very good at telling people what they do, but they all kind of do the same thing. What they're not really good at is telling people the how and the why. And the how and the why is why people buy. It's why an employee might choose to work for them. It's why a pet owner might choose to have them care for their pet. And it's why a primary care veterinarian might choose to collaborate with them on the care of their patients. So without going deep into the branding, there's no compelling reason for someone to choose them over somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And let's talk about the ESOP strategy. Like, how is that different? And why is that something that some of your clients specifically have decided is a better way to maintain their identity, maintain their brand? I mean, how does that all work?
So I will first share a disclaimer that I am by no means an expert on ESOPs. In fact, I am truly a novice. I understand the basic framework technically and financially, but what I understand deeply and where I think why you and Travis asked me to participate is I understand the impact on the veterinary business. And so we have worked with Dr. Randy Spencer, a veterinarian in the Phoenix metro area, for 10 years. And he is the one and only that we are aware of today that has taken his enormously successful group of practices. He owns 3 within the Phoenix metro area and has roughly 300 employees, and took them through the transition to become an ESOP, an employee stock ownership program, where his team members now own the practice. He does not. And he sold 100% of it. And he did it for a number of reasons. But I'll back up 10 years because it's not something that happens overnight. And I think he had the right mindset many, many years ago. I did a workshop, a 4-hour workshop at the IVEX conference, the International Veterinary Emergency and Critical Care Society, their annual conference 10 years ago. And his key manager sat in on that workshop. And at the time, Dr. Spencer had 3 practices that he owned that all had different names, different identities, different logos, different websites, different everything. And they were really exploring the idea of rebranding them into one company. And so after sitting through that workshop, his key manager and I and Dr. Spencer got together and really talked about, how do we do this? What are the benefits? How will that impact my team? What will we need to do to make sure our community understands that we're not new ownership, so we strategically went through a process to rename and rebrand them. At the time, they were primary care and emergency only. And not all 3 of them had that emergency component. And I believe one of them at the time had one specialty. They had an internist on board. So they've really matured and grown over the last 10 years. So we took them through that process, and they became First Pet Veterinary Centers, the one to call. And that was their tagline, playing on the first pet. And so over time, the 3 locations have all built new hospitals. They won the DVM 360 Design Award. They were also a merit winner for another location. And they really worked to bring all of their team members and their community on board in this new culture and this new branding and what that meant. So they started many years ago unifying the team under this one umbrella. And I thought that was a really important place to start. And of course, then they grew over time, and each of the 3 practices became 24/7. And now all 3 today offer primary care, emergency care, and specialty care. So
when I kind of think about that, Robin, and then obviously tying a lot of the work that it sounds like Dr. Spencer did early on to a decision that he made recently. And I mean, I think you've worked with him for a long time in the ESOP. How do you see that connection between the ESOP and like the culture and the team working together? And again, in spending time with Dr. Spencer, how has he experienced that or lived it firsthand?
So Travis, I think that's really the key and the most important question. And Dr. Spencer was very, very smart to seek appropriate specialists to help guide him through this process to learn about an ESOP. He was unaware of what it was, and he happened to read about it and thought this might be a good plan for him. He was approaching his 60s at the time, and he thought, look, I get a call from a corporate company every week. I'm not interested in selling to a corporation. Really, what are my options? So he sought guidance first and foremost from a group called the Great Game of Business, and they're a coaching organization. And he engaged them 3 years ago to help coach him and his managers to teach his team about an ownership culture. What does that mean? And really taught them by sharing open book management and how their day-to-day work impacts the business, because he knew the term employee owned wasn't going to be meaningful to them until they really understood what that meant. Now, fast forward.
Can I ask just a quick question on the Great Game of Business? This,
Sure.
mindset, and you jumped to the economics of it, which is, it's obviously that's a big piece of ownership is the economics. But, in my work and other people I've talked to who have tried to create this ownership mindset, there's a lot of other pieces that go into ownership mindset and creating that culture. Have you talked at all with Dr. Spencer about how he moved just beyond the economics, but creating like that true sense that everybody was on the same team and pulling the rope the same direction?
Yeah. So once he first engaged with the Great Game of Business, transparency was really key for him. And his focus was on building a culture of trust. Now, I will tell you that he naturally was all about that because that's who he is. And he really let his managers do their job. They had a lot of autonomy. So he started off on a good front. But working with the Great Game of Business, they had monthly meetings that went through all of this. They then had department meetings, team huddles on a regular basis. And over several years, really rolled this out. So little by little, different departments and different committees were learning how to take ownership and solve problems and bring ideas to the table and be rewarded for it. So it happened very naturally over time by utilizing some of the skills and tools that the Great Game of Business taught them. In fact, they ended up earning a couple of awards as a company from the Great Game of Business because they did such a good job embracing this approach to engaging their employees. Now, what ended up happening, which was so interesting, and there's a great article in the January 2022 Today's Veterinary Business publication. It's actually the cover story on Dr. Spencer and how this all worked. If anybody wants to reference it, which, we included a couple of segments and snippets from employees because we really wanted to know, well, ultimately, what did they think about it? Because Dr. Spencer intended to create a wonderful retirement vehicle for his team. I mean, he felt comfortable that the veterinarians would be able to earn enough to have a good retirement, but he really wanted to give his team and longstanding team members a vehicle for some financial security on top of feeling part of and proud of the work they're doing. He also wanted to create legacy where he built this incredible hospital culture and he wanted to protect it and protect the team that were enjoying it and really driving it by allowing the team members to engage in and participate authentically in business decisions. And he really
let's jump into that a little bit. So within the ESOP structure and framework, really the employees become the owners of the entity. They're the ones who continue to push the business forward. Travis had mentioned, obviously there comes with certain financial benefits of that. And we're just talking about retirement, but when you think about culture and you think about employee engagement, in the case that you've worked on, what has that, how has that worked through the ESOP? And then now that they're on the other side, what have y'all seen? Have y'all seen an uptick in that kind of thing? How has it been?
Well, I will tell you, recruitment is still challenging for them like it is everybody else. However, I think they have a real advantage in several key areas. First and foremost, they have a lot of very long tenured team members. And I think anybody considering going to work for First Pet will see that. And that, I think, speaks volumes for the culture. I think it has, talking with employees, for a prospective candidate to talk with employees and asking them about, we all have a voice. And not only do we have a voice, but we all affect change daily. and changes can be made, very nimbly, because we don't have a layered structure to get through, where we hope it trickles up to corporate agrees, and then they allow us, by trickling down, to change something 8 months down the road. So I think prospective candidates are really finding an intriguing opportunity in talking to First Pet. And so I think they have a leg up there. And then I think, some of the snippets from some of the employees that we've captured over time, over the last year of their ownership, has just been, you almost feel like this can't be real. The employees are so happy about it. But I think in so many cases, employees have not felt valued, have not felt heard, and have not felt like their voice mattered. And I think, at least from what we've seen in the last year, once the transition went through last September and working up to it, they're actually now seeing that 3 years of preparation has come true. Like, it was not smoke and mirrors. This actually happened. And they're now seeing their ownership shares grow over time, because their ownership shares grow the longer they're with the company. And so it's like the magic happened.
It sounds like overall, from a team perspective and ability to have the team go out and engage people, it's been very successful for Dr. Spencer. I guess, follow-up question for me would be, how long ago did he start this process? How is he feeling now about the decision to go with the ESOP? Is it still positive from his mindset? And, as he thinks about comparing ESOP to, maybe a corporate, exit, there obviously are some economic concessions. And has he felt good about those as things have continued to progress?
Great question, because ESOPs are not without risks, both financial, cultural, they don't all make it. So again, I think the fact that he really engaged the appropriate guidance really made all the difference. And the fact that he prepared, like I said, the Great Game of Business coaching organization, he brought in 3 years prior to really educate the team on an ownership culture and what that would mean to them, and then taught them how to think like an owner, so that by the time they were ready to transition, it would be pretty seamless. It's certainly my understanding that it has been an overwhelming success. It's been just over a year since they actually signed the documents, and they were able to share the success at the IVEX conference this past September 2022. And they had a 3-hour program where Dr. Spencer took the first hour and really talked about ESOP as an option for an exit, and why he chose that route and what went into it. And then he brought in various levels of his team, from doctors to medical directors to technicians to managers, to man a panel for the next 2 hours, and talked about what it was like for them, why they were excited about it, how it's meant, how it's affected them going forward. And it was an overwhelmingly successful program, strongly attended. And I think it really opened people's eyes to the fact that, a corporate buyer is not the only option for a successful or larger practice. ESOPs are not for smaller businesses or startups. They're for larger companies typically, and for those that have, some level of success. And he's thrilled. And now his goal is to help share this option with other owners in his situation, so that more will consider it, because most importantly, it's good for the profession to keep these talented, dedicated people in the profession by fully engaging them, so that it's not just a DVM owned business, it's an employee owned business. And they all have a stake in the outcome. They all have better financial security. They all have pride in their day-to-day work, and they have a true say in the future of pet care. And I think that's been, the key to making sure we retain team members during this really difficult shortage of staff, an ESOP is an ideal option to retain and grow staff because they feel so good about their contribution and the rewards they get, on top of excellent patient care.
Wow. I mean, this has been awesome. Robin, thank you so much. I mean, there's so much good insight here for the Vet Worthwhile community and for our listeners. I had several key takeaways. I mean, there's so many good nuggets in there, but one, and this is what you were talking about early on, is really going deeper than the service offering into the hospital identity, what the message is, how they can tell their story, thinking how that, like linking that in certain types of practices to explore whatever options may be available for succession, and specifically to the ESOP, potentially seeing longer tenure, better economic opportunities for the entire staff, alignment, making everybody feel like an owner and pushing the culture forward. And then lastly, the legacy piece is the desire to keep it employee owned, where everybody has a stake in the practice's future and everybody can contribute together. So just so many good things in there. And then, I mean, just wow, it's great.
Wow, what a great summation. Thank you, James. And I, to kind of close it out, I just really think, it's rarely a veterinarian that you meet that didn't become a veterinarian, because they had a calling to care for animals. And I think this option truly extends that calling in a way that the entire team benefits, because nobody makes a tremendous amount of money in vet med. We do it for the calling. And I think this rewards everybody, most notably the pet and their family, by keeping the team happy, engaged, and rewarded in their own right beyond the pride in the work they do.
No, I love it, Robin. I mean, and I think, you highlighted something that, and maybe even if we're lucky enough at some point in time to grab Dr. Spencer and bring him on, he can dig deeper. But, it's starting early, right? Understand your options, start early, and then you can drive the outcomes that you're sharing that they experienced with Dr. Spencer's hospitals. It's an amazing story. And I think it's something that everybody should be at least having on their radar to explore how it fits for them. And, what I would love to share with our listeners is, obviously we talked a lot today, Robin, about the legacy piece of this and the impact of the team and the impact in the community. As you alluded to, ESOPs are a very complicated structure. There's a lot of tax moving pieces. There's a lot of financial moving pieces. As a follow-up, we are going to be bringing on one of James's colleagues, Brian Fry, in our next episode to talk about some of those technical details. So excited about that, because I think you've laid the groundwork for the community impact that could occur for a hospital where an ESOP is the right fit.
I think it addresses so many pain points that the veterinary profession is facing today that many practice owners aren't aware of. And, we all attend conferences, Travis, James, I, and others, to try and help collaborate and solve some of these pain points. And I think this is just a vehicle that not many are aware of. I applaud Dr. Spencer for not just committing to doing it right and doing it successfully, but wanting to share it with others. And I think that one of the keys to his success was hiring people like you, Travis, and you, James, the experts, and even people like us at BluePrints to build a brand, build a culture, have someone, like you, Travis, who can connect all the financial and branding and operational pieces. And then, a group like James to really maneuver through all the complex financial and tax implications so that, Dr. Spencer or whomever reaps the rewards that he is owed, and at the same time does right by his team.
Absolutely. So, Robin, I just first and foremost want to thank you for taking time to tell us a little bit about your experience with ESOP, your background, share Dr. Spencer's story. I know when you and I talked earlier, we talked about ESOPs being, potentially something that could be very impactful and cool in the veterinary world. So, we have a little saying that we always kind of wrap up our episodes with that says, everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change the toilet paper. Definitely talking about ESOP sounds like you want to change the vet world. Do you change the toilet paper roll when it's empty, or do you sneak out?
Well, I do change it. In fact, oh God, this is getting really TMI, I'm sure for many people, but my husband and I, I'm an over, he's an under. And so when I change it, I will even change his under so that it's over because I prefer the over.
That does not surprise me, Robin. So, all right. So now that we know from your advice that toilet paper is much better if it comes over the roll, do you have any advice for somebody who wants to change the vet world?
There are a couple of things I have done. I started a nonprofit 10 years ago as well for things that people said wouldn't work. And I think for people that want to change the world, they just have to talk to like-minded people and get together and do it. Just because some people tell you no, or, oh, that won't work, fear can stop anybody, but it can also be overcome. And the right like-minded people, one step at a time, really can change the world. I'm not a clinical professional, and I like to think I created an entirely new niche in the marketing world, working with specialty and emergency. It didn't exist before BluePrints. I didn't know if it would work, but it was important to me as a pet owner to have awareness of and access to the level of expertise that specialists were making available. And so I went and did it. And I think that fortunately, 16 years later, it's been fully embraced. And I think that it is entirely possible for us to identify the pain points and find ways to improve upon them so that more people, frankly, like the three of us and our pets, get the care they need. And that's what this is about.
Love it. You heard it here first. Get out there, go do it, go have those great conversations, push the ball forward. This has been the Vet Worthwhile podcast. Thanks again, Robin Brogdon, industry icon, veterinary marketing legend. Thanks again for joining us on our show. See ya.
Oh, you are so welcome.
Thanks again for tuning in to the Vet Worthwhile podcast. You can find us online at signaturefd.com/signature-veterinary. And then our ask would be, if you found this episode valuable, just think of one friend or colleague that you think would enjoy the content and just please share. So thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Travis York is the owner of 3-in-1 Vet Advisors and a partner of Signature FD. 3-in-1 Vet Advisors is a veterinary consulting and strategic planning firm of which Signature FD has no involvement or ownership. James Yost is a partner and wealth advisor at Signature FD. Signature FD is an investment advisor registered with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. 3-in-1 Vet Advisors and Signature FD are not affiliated. Mr. York provides all non-investment advisory services through 3-in-1 Vet Advisors. The opinions of the guests and the contents of this podcast are intended to be educational only and should not be relied upon as investment, tax, business, or planning advice. You should consult with a professional advisor prior to taking any course of action that may impact you or your business.